Welcome! Ever wonder who makes it onto the infamous Darwin Awards list? Today we take a look at those people who somehow made the stupidly impossible possible. From an inventor who used his own body to test a homemade launcher, to a chemist who showed off his fire-resistant jacket at a backyard barbecue, ending the party in the craziest way possible. It was the 5th of July, 2020. The whole world was in lockdown. People were stuck at home, bored and restless, spending more time than ever watching videos online. In a backyard in rural Russia, one man was about to make a decision that would cost him his life. Arkady Belyayev was 36 years old. He had studied mechanical engineering at a state technical university and knew a lot about how machines worked. After university, he worked at a local factory designing parts and equipment, but he had bigger dreams. He left his job and started making videos online, building incredible machines in his backyard for the world to watch. His engineering background set him apart. He measured everything carefully and always knew what he was doing, and his channel kept growing because of it. When the lockdown hit, with more people glued to their screens than ever, Arkady decided to build something spectacular. A massive pneumatic cannon, powerful enough to launch something far heavier than any cannonball. He worked on it for weeks, filming every step and explaining the air pressure system, the reinforced launch tube, and the force it could generate. His viewers were excited. The comments section was buzzing. For the final demonstration, Arkady made a terrible choice. He could have launched a weighted dummy. Instead, he decided the only way to truly wow his audience was to launch himself. Not a cannonball, but himself. He wanted something extreme, something that would go viral and bring thousands of new viewers to his channel. I keep thinking about that dummy just sitting there, weighted, replaceable, perfectly fine with being launched into a wall. He chose himself instead. I guess a sandbag flying through the air just doesn't get the views. He had worked out the math, the angle, the pressure, the distance he expected to travel, and at the end of that arc was supposed to be a large safety net, ready to catch him on landing. The plan was simple. He would climb into the launch tube, fire the cannon by remote, and fly across the yard, landing safely in the net. But Arkady had rushed the setup. The net was there, but it had not been anchored properly, and it sat closer to the cannon than his calculations actually required. The camera was rolling when Arkady fired the cannon. He launched into the air exactly as planned, following the arc he had calculated down to the degree. But because the net was set too close, he sailed straight over it, completely missing the one thing meant to save him. I just wish he'd spent 5 more minutes on the net, because close enough and correct are very different things when you're airborne. His body struck the sharp edge of a concrete wall at the boundary of the property, the impact catching him across the torso and shoulder, before he dropped to the ground below. As he landed, his head struck the edge of a stone paving slab. Neighbors heard a heavy crack and called emergency services. Emergency services arrived within minutes, finding Arkady Belyayev unresponsive with catastrophic injuries to his skull, spine, ribs, and chest. He was rushed to hospital but pronounced dead that same evening. The post-mortem confirmed severe blunt force trauma, consistent with a high-speed collision against a hard edge, followed by a fall onto a rigid surface. Forensic review of the recovered footage showed the launcher had performed exactly as built. No malfunction, no miscalculation. The net, listed in Arkady Belyayev's own notes as a required safety measure, had been set up in the wrong place. The cannon worked perfectly. The math checked out, and the only thing wrong was where they put the one object meant to keep him alive. Well, he did say he wanted to give the internet something to talk about. Across the world, another man was trying to go viral. Though his method was different, the motivation was the same, and it would lead him to the very same outcome, proving that some patterns are universal. It was on the 31st of December, 2017. A quiet suburban neighborhood in Texas was alive with the sound of fireworks and laughter, the kind of night that felt full of possibility, the kind of night that made young people feel invincible. Bobby Bruce Sinclair was 22 years old, full of energy, and always on the lookout for the next big idea, the kind of clip that would stop someone mid-scroll and make them hit share without thinking twice, the kind of moment that would make his small friend group laugh and the internet go wild. Bobby had spent weeks watching fireworks, stunt videos online, short clips of people doing dangerous things with pyrotechnics and walking away smiling, and somewhere along the way, he had convinced himself that he could do something even better, something nobody had seen before. I've watched a few of those stunt videos myself, and I get it. They make it look so easy. What nobody shows you is the footage of the people who didn't walk away smiling. His plan was simple in his mind. Take a motorcycle helmet, tape 8 to 12 bottle rockets around the outside, wear the helmet, light the fuses, and let the rockets launch straight up into the New Year's sky while his friend filmed every second of it, a personal fireworks display launched from his own head, the perfect viral video. A motorcycle helmet, tape, and 8 to 12 bottle rockets pointed at his own head. Somewhere, a physics textbook wept quietly. His friends were not fully convinced. A few of them said it seemed like a bad idea, but Bobby was certain, and their hesitation faded quickly into laughter and camera phones, and one friend was assigned to record while the others stepped back. Bobby did not use any frame or structure to hold the rockets in place. He simply taped them directly to the helmet with no shielding at uneven angles, the sticks pointing in slightly different directions, with no system to control which fuse lit first, or how the thrust would behave once ignition began. The rockets did not launch cleanly upward. The misaligned angles sent thrust sideways and backwards simultaneously. Burning fuses caught adjacent rockets in a rapid chain reaction, and at least one rocket failed to launch at all and burned directly against the helmet's surface, close enough to cause severe burns to his scalp, face, and neck. The sudden force and heat sent Bobby staggering backward, and he fell hard, striking his head against the ground with significant impact, and his friends froze, unsure whether remaining rockets were still active, delaying their approach. I can't really blame his friends for freezing. I'd have frozen too, but by the time they reached him, I think the damage was already mostly done. Bobby was conscious, but badly disoriented. Emergency services were called, and he was transported to hospital, where doctors found that the burns covered a significant portion of his head and upper body, and that the impact with the ground had caused serious trauma to his skull and brain. Despite treatment, his condition deteriorated steadily over the following hours. Bobby Sinclair died later that day from complications related to severe burn injuries and traumatic brain trauma sustained during the incident. Smoke exposure was noted only as a secondary contributing factor. Investigators reviewed video recorded by one of Bobby's friends and determined that no single explosion had caused the fatal injuries. The footage showed a chain reaction of misaligned rockets, uncontrolled ignition, and the fall that ultimately proved fatal. No charges were filed against those present, and investigators concluded that Bobby had acted on his own initiative. Bobby believed he understood the risk well enough to manage it, but what he wore that night was not a stunt. It was an uncontrolled system, and it ran exactly the way physics said it would. Texas said goodbye to Bobby on New Year's Day. 2 years earlier, in Montana, a man was forming a theory, a very confident theory about fear and bees. The 13th of August, 2015, on the outskirts of Bozeman, Montana, where a large wild bee colony sat quietly inside a cluster of trees on the edge of an agricultural property, and had done so for years, and everyone who worked nearby knew to leave it alone. Collins Matthew Duane was a 42-year-old maintenance supervisor at a large agricultural equipment company, where he was known for being dependable, hardworking, and extremely stubborn in a way that made it hard for anyone to change his opinion once he had made up his mind. He rarely doubted himself, and over time, this confidence became a defining part of how people saw him at work and how he saw himself in return. A few months before the incident, Collins became focused on a set of online videos he had watched, which claimed that animals could sense fear and would often attack people who showed nervousness or hesitation. The idea stuck in his mind and grew stronger with time, especially because he believed it explained behavior in a simple and clear way that others seemed to overlook. To test what he believed, Collins approached unfamiliar dogs on 2 separate occasions, walking past them calmly and without showing any fear. Both times, nothing happened, and the dogs simply ignored him. Instead of questioning the idea, he saw these moments as confirmation that he was right, and this only made him more confident. He began to see it not just as a theory, but as something close to a rule about how the natural world worked. Two dogs ignored him, and he took it as proof. I do not say that to mock him. I say it because I recognize how human that is, how easily a belief we already want to hold gets confirmed by the first evidence that supports it. Near the company property, a large wild bee colony was hidden in a group of trees, a place everyone knew to avoid. The bees were highly defensive when disturbed, and employees were regularly warned to stay clear. Collins, however, believed the bees would behave like dogs and not react aggressively if he stayed calm. Despite warnings from coworkers and suggestions to wear protective gear, he refused. One day, with several coworkers watching from a safe distance, he walked toward the hive. When the bees showed no immediate reaction, his confidence grew. He turned briefly to the others as if proving his point, then moved even closer and reached out slowly with his bare hand to pull away a piece of honeycomb. In that instant, the situation changed completely as the colony reacted to the direct disturbance of its nest. Guard bees surged out immediately, and within seconds, the response grew larger and more intense. He was so certain, so completely convinced that he was right, that he paused to show the people watching. I think about those coworkers standing at a safe distance, and I wonder what it felt like to watch what came next. The bees swarmed him quickly, and Collins turned and ran across the field while trying to swat them away, but the attack continued as the alarm spread through the colony and more bees joined in. His co-workers could only watch from a distance, unable to help safely as the swarm followed him far from the trees. By the time the emergency responders arrived, he had already suffered hundreds of stings and was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors attempted to treat the severe venom exposure, but his body had already been overwhelmed by the effects, including widespread systemic damage and complications that continued to worsen. Despite their efforts, Collins died later that day. Investigators later confirmed that the bees had behaved normally and had only reacted to the disturbance of their hive, not to any unusual conditions. In the days that followed, safety measures were introduced around the area. Warning signs were placed near the colony, and the hive was eventually relocated by professionals. For those who knew Collins, the incident became a lasting reminder of how a single belief, strengthened by small experiences and never questioned, can lead someone into a situation they never truly understood until it was too late. The bees acted like bees. They always had. Collins had run his idea on dogs and figured it worked on all animals. It didn't. Collins died thinking he was being brave. I don't think he was. While this guy died doing what he thought was brave, our next man died doing something that felt sensible but wasn't. He was just trying to clean his bathroom. It was the 15th of September, 2021. In a small apartment on the outskirts of Novi Sad, Serbia, a man decided to clean his bathroom, and that simple decision would cost him everything. Marko Jovanovic, a 30-year-old maintenance technician at a food processing plant in Novi Sad, was known among friends and coworkers as someone who preferred solving problems himself. Years spent repairing machinery had given him confidence in his practical abilities, and he rarely hired outside help for household tasks. I have to say, I respect a guy who fixes his own stuff. Years of practical confidence, never calling for help. I just wish that confidence had come with a little caution. His bathroom had been giving him trouble for a while. Moisture had built up along the walls. Stains had settled near the sink and shower, and a persistent smell refused to go away no matter what he tried. The window had been sealed shut during an earlier repair job, and the ventilation fan had long stopped working, so the small room had no way to breathe. I keep wondering how he didn't notice that yet, but honestly, most of us don't think about ventilation until it's already a problem. Frustrated that ordinary cleaning products were not working, Marko went online looking for something stronger. And he found informal advice suggesting that mixing certain household cleaning chemicals together would produce a more powerful result. The warnings attached to that advice were vague. Nothing that explained what could actually go wrong, just a casual, be careful. And Marko, like many people would, took that to mean the method was safe enough. He mixed 2 household cleaning products together in a plastic container in the sink, and almost immediately, the room filled with sharp, irritating fumes. His eyes began to burn, his throat tightened. As the minutes passed, the air in that sealed, unventilated bathroom grew worse. Marco's breathing became more labored, but still, he was not noticing any progress. Then he made the decision that sealed his fate. He poured a small amount of gasoline into the sink mixture, believing it would help dissolve the stubborn residue faster. Within seconds, a sharp chemical smell began filling the room. His eyes watered, his throat burned, and coughing hard, he stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind him. What Marco did not know was that the chemicals kept reacting after he left. The bathroom had no working fan and a window that could not open, so the fumes had nowhere to go. They just kept building up inside that small, sealed room. After a few minutes, Marco figured the cleaning solution had done its job, so he lit a cigarette in the kitchen and walked back toward the bathroom. He was still flicking the lighter as he pushed the door open. I think I know exactly where this is going, and I really don't want to. The flame contacted the contaminated air, and a flash fire exploded through the doorway, shattering the mirror, cracking tiles, and blowing the bathroom door completely off its hinges. The blast throwing Marco backward into the hallway wall. I think this is the moment any chance of this being fine completely left the building, along with most of the bathroom. Neighbors heard a small explosion and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Marco to hospital. He died the following day from acute respiratory failure caused by severe inhalation injury and thermal damage to the respiratory tract sustained during the flash fire. The explosion caused serious damage throughout the apartment, with the bathroom suffering the worst destruction, the door blown apart, tiles dislodged, plumbing damaged, and broken glass scattered across several rooms, and authorities temporarily declared the unit uninhabitable. Fire investigators ruled out a gas leak and electrical fault, concluding that improperly mixed cleaning products had generated the flammable vapors, and a formal report was issued documenting the accident. Repairs took several months, though structural inspections confirmed the building itself was undamaged. Investigators determined the tragedy resulted from a chain of avoidable decisions, proving ordinary household products can turn deadly without basic safety precautions. Meanwhile, in Ohio, 2 friends tried to have a little fun. A $20 bet, a speed bump. You can already see where this is going. It was the 21st of July, 2018, in the suburb of Westerville, Ohio. The street was well lit and traffic was light. A decision between 2 longtime friends ended in a tragedy neither expected. Darren Matthew Miles was 24 and worked part-time at a warehouse loading delivery trucks. Friends described him as outgoing, humorous, and always willing to take part in a challenge. His closest friend, Kyle Joshua Bennett, was 23 and worked at an auto parts store. The two had known each other since high school and spent much of their free time together. Neither man was known for serious, reckless behavior. However, both shared a tendency to treat bad ideas as harmless fun if they seemed entertaining in the moment. On the evening of the incident, Darren finished work and met up with Kyle. As they often did, they spent the evening driving around town with no particular destination. During their drive, they began watching short stunt videos on their phones while parked. Most were quickly forgotten, but one clip caught their attention. It showed someone standing on the roof of a moving vehicle. The stunt looked dangerous, but it also appeared easy. The person in the video seemed calm and in control. Rather than focusing on the risks, Darren and Kyle focused on the fact that someone had done it successfully. The person in the video seemed calm and in control. Of course they did. The camera only shows the part where it works. Darren and Kyle did not think about that. The idea remained in their conversation. What began as a joke gradually became a challenge, and then a small $20 bet. Neither man spent much time considering the danger. The roads were quiet, traffic was light, and they believed the stunt would last only a few seconds. Their confidence came from the assumption that nothing would go wrong. Shortly after sunset, they pulled onto a long residential street on the opposite side of town from Kyle's usual routes. Darren climbed onto the roof of Kyle's sedan and held onto the roof rails. Kyle began driving slowly. At first, everything seemed fine. Darren remained crouched and balanced. As the car continued forward, confidence replaced caution. Kyle gradually increased speed. Nothing happened at 10 miles per hour. Nothing happened at 30 miles per hour. Eventually, the car reached approximately 40 miles per hour. Darren stood upright and managed to stay balanced despite strong wind resistance. Later estimates suggested he remained on the roof for roughly 500 feet. I recognize this pattern. You try something dangerous and survive the first moments, then you believe nothing can go wrong. That was what was happening to Darren. While checking on Darren, Kyle briefly looked upward through the windshield. At the same time, he failed to notice a recently installed speed bump ahead. The front wheels struck it at speed. The vehicle jolted sharply upward. Darren instantly lost his balance and was thrown from the roof. Witnesses later reported seeing him strike the pavement head first. A nearby pedestrian called emergency services. Emergency responders arrived quickly and transported Darren to a local hospital. Despite treatment, he died from severe traumatic brain injuries sustained during the fall. Investigators found no evidence of alcohol, drugs, or vehicle malfunction. The incident was attributed entirely to the decision to perform the stunt and the loss of balance caused by the speed bump. Several days later, Kyle attended Darren's funeral. Before leaving, he quietly placed a folded $20 bill near a display of photographs. That is perhaps the saddest sentence in this entire episode. It really is. For those who knew them, the tragedy became a reminder that life-changing accidents often begin with ordinary people, a moment of misplaced confidence, and a decision that seems harmless until it is too late. Some people chase the internet's attention. Some people chase the mere satisfaction of being right. And a young man in the Netherlands chased both at a barbecue on fire. It was on the 12th of April, 2014, and in a quiet residential suburb outside Utrecht in the Netherlands, a backyard barbecue was about to become the setting for a fatal miscalculation. Jeroen van Dijk was 29 years old, a maintenance technician who spent much of his free time on chemistry forums, watching homemade experiment videos, and testing ideas in his own backyard. He was the kind of person who needed to see things work for himself, and that curiosity had always served him well. Until it didn't. Sometime before the gathering, Jeroen had come across an online forum discussing a homemade fire-retardant mixture, a chemical solution that could supposedly be applied to fabric to reduce how quickly it caught fire. The post included short video clips of treated cloth resisting a brief flame, and to Jeroen, the results looked convincing. What the forum did not include was any safety guidance for human use, and Jeroen did not look for any. He prepared his own version of the mixture at home, soaked a canvas jacket in it, and let it dry fully. He then ran small indoor tests on fabric samples, held a lighter close, watched the material resist ignition, and considered the experiment a success. In his mind, a jacket that resisted fire was a jacket that protected the person wearing it, and that distinction between material performance and human safety would prove fatal. The jacket resisted fire. The test was a success. There was, however, a small flaw in the experimental design. Jeroen was planning to be inside the jacket. At the barbecue, surrounded by friends and with a mobile phone pointed in his direction, Jeroen announced that he intended to demonstrate the jacket's fire resistance live. He moved to an open area of the garden, confirmed the camera was rolling, applied a flammable liquid to the jacket's surface, and set it alight. For a brief moment, the treated canvas did exactly what his tests had suggested. The surface resisted immediate combustion, and those watching felt the early stirrings of being impressed. But heat does not stop at fabric, and what the homemade coating could not do was block the thermal energy building underneath it or redirect the rising flame above it. To be honest, I'd be impressed too. However, it was the calm before the storm. Within seconds, the heat exceeded what the treatment could contain. Rising flames reached his hair, which ignited immediately. Fire then spread to the untreated clothing below the jacket, and panic set in fast. The jacket, now a source of danger rather than protection, was not removed quickly enough. By the time bystanders moved in with blankets and a hose to suppress the fire, the damage had already been done. Emergency services were contacted immediately and arrived to find Jeroen with severe burns to his head, neck, hands, and lower body. He was transferred to a specialist burn unit and underwent multiple procedures over the days that followed. He died 11 days later from complications. Investigators who reviewed the incident confirmed that Jerome's homemade coating did, in fact, increase the fabric's resistance to ignition. The material worked within its very narrow limits. What it could not do was protect the human body wearing it from radiant heat, rising flame, or the transfer of temperature through and beyond the treated surface. Jerome had tested the jacket. He had not tested what would happen to him inside of it. That distinction, as it turned out, was everything. The death was classified as accidental, and the case became a reference point in discussions around the risks of DIY chemical experimentation, specifically the danger of misreading small-scale material results as confirmation of real-world personal safety.